Oliver Dowden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and may I begin by referring members to my register of members' interests, including my position as chair of the APPG for the UAE. Madam Deputy Speaker, it didn't have to be this way. The roots of this budget and its failure began with the last one. It began with the unnecessary delay and scaremongering before that budget, which in turn frightened consumers and scared businesses off of investment. And then, in turn, when the budget was announced, the Chancellor made three key errors. The first thing she did was to choose to tax probably the worst thing in terms of jobs and growth by putting up national insurance contributions. She chose to drive human capital and financial capital away from the United Kingdom with the abolition of the non-dom tax status, and she chose a totally unrealistically low level of fiscal headroom, which meant that by the time the Chancellor sat down, markets were already preparing for the next round of tax rises, and this sense only grew with the U-turn on welfare reforms. And the problem is, the government is making exactly the same mistake all over again, with the litany of leaks culminating in the extraordinary position of the OBR publishing the entire content of the Chancellor's budget before she even stood up, rendering the entire speech meaningless. And now, in turn, this budget demonstrates a simple and clear choice: higher welfare paid for by higher taxes. And for my constituents, that means higher income tax, it means higher taxes on their savings, it means higher taxes on their dividends, and in a constituency like mine, which has seen house prices soar over the past 30-odd years, now to astronomical levels, there is a real risk that older people in their family homes that they bought at very low prices are now going to have, by skimping and scraping to do so, I should say, are now going to have to find several £1,000s every year just to stay in their family home that they so love. And I think that is a real problem that is going to emerge from this budget, and I would urge the Chancellor to look at the very least at ameliorating measures to stop older people having to sell their homes in order to pay their council tax bills. But beyond this, there lies this strategic choice, and we all know exactly what has happened. The Labour leadership has watched in fear as its vote hemorrhages to the left. This budget is all about shoring up Labour's tax base. The residents of Bushey, the residents of Radlett, the residents of Potters Bar, the residents of Boreham Wood, their taxes are being hiked to pay for higher welfare to appease Labour's backbenchers. I will happily give way.
I thank the right honourable gentleman for giving way. Would he not accept that in addition to the taxpayers that he's talking about in those communities, which I've visited and know in Bushey and Boreham Wood and other parts of Hertsmere constituency, there will be families who, amongst his own constituents, who have more than one child and receive more than two children and receive benefits, who will be positively impacted by today's budget, and he could at least nod in the direction of those of his constituents who will benefit from the measures that the Chancellor has set out.
I think that the problem with that analysis is that many people on the same street will think to themselves, I chose not to have another child because I couldn't afford to do so, and yet now my neighbour is able to have more children paid for by the taxman through welfare. And that is the fundamental unfairness at the heart of this budget announcement. But worse than that, I will give away in a moment, but worse than that, this failure to grasp welfare reform risks neglecting a whole generation. We already see young workers' prospects under threat from AI. We see the prospects of employment being hit by Labour's jobs tax and the labour market regulation, which is discouraging hiring. And now the message seems to emerge from the government: don't worry, abandon ambition, there's ever higher welfare under Labour, that's the reason why you should vote for us. I will happily give way.
I'm grateful to my right honourable friend. He's making a characteristically excellent speech. Would he agree with me that we are at the tipping point where the welfare state is ceasing to be what we've always wanted it to be, which is a safety net below which nobody can fall, but instead is becoming a cocoon which is going to trap a whole generation in dependency and absolutely kill off aspiration and social mobility.
As ever, my honourable friend is totally correct. Of course the welfare state should be there for those people in temporary difficulty, but it cannot be a lifestyle, which is what ends up happening. I will give way to the chairman of the Treasury Select Committee, then I must make some progress, so forgive.
I do thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for giving way. Look, we've had evidence at the committee. It is absolutely a fallacy which we need to nail, that people choose to have more children to get more benefits. That is not the case. People fall on hard times. That safety net is there, and the ambition of my young families in Hackney is immense, but they are held back. There are a lot more systemic issues about poverty, but this will tackle it for that generation, and we need to welcome it.
Well, of course there will be the occasional person that falls on hard times, but I think she should try saying that to many, many of my constituents who are unable to have more children. They take the choice not to have it, and that option is now, there's an imbalance between that and the approach taken on welfare. And so we have a situation where at the same time as the United Kingdom is embracing higher taxes and an ever greater role for the state, beyond Europe, lower tax dynamism abounds. We can see the US surging with freer markets and a tech and energy bonanza. You only need to look to the Gulf, to states like the UAE and Saudi Arabia that are embracing tech, finance and alternative energy. Now, a generation ago, this would have mattered less. But now we're in the position where labour and capital are highly mobile, and we are seeing more and more people voting with their feet, leaving the United Kingdom by the tens of thousands, and this tide is washing out our very brightest and best away from our shores, and I fear that once those people leave, it is very hard to get them to come back. And the sadness of all of this is that the United Kingdom remains a wonderful country. It is actually a beacon of stability with the rule of law, the English language, the time zone, great research universities and a highly talented workforce. And indeed, having criticised the government a lot, I pay tribute to them for successfully concluding a number of free trade agreements, including with India and the United States. And I hope that others will follow, including with the GCC. So at a time when other countries present challenges, whether it's the security situation in relation to China, whether it's the unpredictability of the United States or stagnation in Europe, the United Kingdom actually has a golden opportunity to be a magnet for investment from businesses and entrepreneurs around the world. But the risk is that we are consigning ourselves to a situation which a Scottish entrepreneur described to me a couple of days ago as being the why bother economy. And what he meant by that was that, of course, people aren't going to disinvest, but they won't choose to actively invest in the United Kingdom because we are not creating the environment where we are rewarding risk-taking and entrepreneurship. So if we are to seize this moment, there are a few simple steps that we could take, and I would urge the Chancellor to do so in order to light the fire of competitiveness. First of all, instead of trying to drive away the wealthiest and biggest global investors, as we have done with the abolition of the non-dom status, we should be welcoming them and gaining more revenue at the same time. One only needs to look at the Italian model, where they have imposed a relatively high fee, but in return to that have exempted wealthy mobile people from paying further taxation. As a result of that, investment in Italy is surging, and the number of wealthy people choosing to locate in Italy is surging, with all the opportunities that brings for growth and investment. Instead of obsessing with policing social media, we should be aggressively policing the sort of small, low-level crime that drives people away from locating in this country, whether it's the phone snatching, the shoplifting, or the general sense that the streets of this country have become less safe than they were a few years ago. And instead of clobbering entrepreneurs, wealth creators, and hard-working Brits with ever higher marginal rates, we should have the confidence to believe that lower marginal rates generate higher revenues in the long run and benefit absolutely everyone. And most importantly of all, in relation to this budget, instead of consigning a generation to welfare, we should be aggressively reforming the welfare state to create opportunities for all. It really isn't too late for the government to seize this opportunity, but sadly, I fear that only a change of government, and of course a change of government to the Conservative Party, will be able to deliver those things.
Liam Byrne.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, I don't know what